When she knocked on my door at 10:47 p.m., I thought she was lost. I had no idea she'd traveled across the universe just to find me. Dave wiped the sweat from his forehead as he climbed the stairs to his apartment. The elevator in his building had been broken for 3 weeks now, and his landlord kept saying maybe next month whenever anyone asked about fixing it. At least the climb to the 3rd floor was good exercise, he told himself, even though his legs felt like jelly after another long day at the computer repair shop. The hallway smelled like someone had been cooking fish. Again. Mrs. Chen from apartment 3B always made the most amazing smelling food, but Dave never had the courage to ask her what it was. He fumbled with his keys, trying to find the right one in the dim light. The building was old, probably from the 1960s, and everything creaked and groaned like it was tired of holding itself up. His apartment door finally swung open with its usual squeak. Dave made a mental note to buy some oil for the hinges, the same mental note he'd been making for 6 months. The familiar sight of his small one-bedroom apartment greeted him. It wasn't much to look at, but it was his. A brown couch that had seen better days sat facing a television that was definitely not smart, but got the job done. His laptop was still open on the coffee table from the night before, surrounded by empty coffee cups and a plate with pizza crust on it. Dave dropped his work bag by the door and kicked off his shoes. His feet always hurt after standing behind the counter all day, helping people figure out why their phones wouldn't turn on or why their laptops were making weird noises. He was good at his job, really good actually, but some days he felt like he was just going through the motions. Same problems, same solutions, same conversations with customers who thought technology was magic. He shuffled to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. The light inside flickered on, revealing not much to get excited about. Some leftover Chinese takeout from 2 days ago, a carton of milk that might be getting close to its expiration date, and half a sandwich he'd forgotten about. Dave grabbed the Chinese food container and gave it a sniff. Still good enough. While the food warmed up in the microwave, Dave looked out his kitchen window. The street below was busy with its usual evening rush. Cars honking, people walking fast with their heads down, everyone trying to get somewhere else. He lived on Maple Street right in the heart of the city, but somehow he always felt like he was watching life happen instead of living it. The microwave beeped, pulling him back to reality. Dave grabbed a fork and settled onto his couch, balancing the container on his lap. He reached for the television remote and started flipping through channels. News about politics he didn't want to think about. A cooking show that made him feel bad about eating takeout again. Some reality TV show where people were yelling at each other for reasons he couldn't understand. He settled on a documentary about space exploration. Something about the vastness of the universe always made him feel both small and connected at the same time. The narrator was talking about how scientists were discovering new planets every day, some that might even have life on them. Dave had always wondered if there really was something else out there, beyond Earth, beyond the daily routine of work and sleep and work again. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text from his coworker Jake asking if he wanted to grab drinks after work tomorrow. Dave stared at the message for a minute before typing back, "Maybe, let me see how I feel." It was the same answer he always gave. Not yes, not no, just maybe. Jake would probably go without him anyway, which was fine. Dave preferred his quiet evenings at home. The documentary was getting interesting. They were showing pictures of a planet that was almost exactly like Earth, just 40 light years away. The scientist being interviewed was excited, talking about how they might find signs of intelligent life within the next few decades. Dave wondered what that would be like, meeting someone from another world. Would they be anything like humans? Would they have the same hopes and fears and daily struggles? He finished his dinner and leaned back into the couch cushions. Outside his window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In an hour or two, the street would be quieter, and he'd probably fall asleep watching television, just like he had for the past few months since his girlfriend Lisa had moved out. Lisa had said he was stuck in a routine and that she needed someone with more adventure in their life. At first, Dave had been hurt, then angry, then just tired. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was stuck. But stuck wasn't necessarily bad, was it? Stuck meant safe, predictable, comfortable. The clock on his phone showed 9:30. Dave considered taking a shower, but he wasn't really dirty, just tired. He decided to stay on the couch a little longer and watch the rest of the documentary. The narrator was now talking about how contact with alien life would change everything humans thought they knew about their place in the universe. By 10:30, Dave was starting to feel drowsy. His eyelids were getting heavy, and the narrator's voice was becoming a comfortable background hum. He thought about just sleeping on the couch tonight. It wouldn't be the first time. His bed was only 20 feet away, but the couch had molded itself to his body over the years, and moving seemed like too much effort. He was just about to close his eyes when he heard something that made him sit up straight. 3 deliberate knocks on his door. Not the quick rap of someone in a hurry, not the uncertain tap of someone who wasn't sure they had the right place. 3 slow, measured knocks that seemed to echo in his small apartment. Dave looked at his phone. 10:47 p.m. Who knocked on doors this late on a Tuesday night? Mrs. Chen was usually asleep by 9. The college student in 3C played music too loud but never bothered anyone directly. Maybe someone had the wrong apartment? It happened sometimes in buildings like this where all the doors looked the same. The knocking came again. Same pattern, same deliberate pace. Dave muted the television and listened carefully. The hallway was quiet except for the usual sounds of the building settling for the night. No footsteps, no voices, no sounds of someone moving around outside his door. He stood up slowly, his legs stiff from sitting on the couch for too long. The floor creaked under his feet as he walked toward the door. Dave looked through the peephole, but the hallway light was dim, and he couldn't make out much of anything. Just a shadow that might be a person. Who is it? Dave called through the door, trying to sound more confident than he felt. No answer. Dave put his hand on the door handle and hesitated. Every instinct told him not to open it. Late-night visitors were never good news. But curiosity was stronger than caution, and he found himself slowly turning the handle. What he saw when he opened that door would change everything about his ordinary, predictable, comfortable life. But in that moment, standing there with his hand on the doorknob, Dave had no idea that his world was about to become something he never could have imagined. Dave's hand trembled slightly as he turned the doorknob. The metal felt cold against his palm, and for a split second he almost changed his mind. But something deep inside pushed him forward, and he slowly pulled the door open. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. A woman stood in the dim hallway, but she wasn't like anyone Dave had ever seen before. She was tall, almost as tall as he was, which was unusual since Dave was 6 feet. Her skin seemed to have a soft glow to it, like she was standing under perfect lighting even though the hallway bulb was old and flickering. Her hair was long and dark, falling in waves that seemed to move even though there was no breeze in the stuffy corridor. But it was her eyes that really got his attention. They were large and seemed to hold depths that reminded him of looking up at the night sky. When she looked directly at him, Dave felt like she was seeing right through him, understanding things about him that he didn't even understand about himself. "Hello," she said, and even her voice was different. It had a musical quality to it, like she was always on the verge of singing. "I hope I'm not disturbing you too much." Dave just stood there for a moment, trying to process what he was seeing. She was wearing a simple dress that seemed to shimmer slightly in the poor light. Her posture was perfect, like she was used to carrying herself with complete confidence. There was something almost royal about the way she stood, but not in a snobbish way, more like someone who was completely comfortable in her own skin. No, you're not disturbing me," Dave finally managed to say. "Can I help you with something? Are you looking for someone?" The woman smiled, and it was like the hallway got a little brighter. "Actually, I was looking for you, Dave." Dave's heart skipped a beat. She knew his name. How did she know his name? He was pretty sure he'd never met her before. He definitely would have remembered someone like her. His mind raced through possibilities. Maybe she was a friend of Lisa's. Maybe she worked at the building management office. Maybe she was new in the building and had asked around about him. "How do you know my name?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "I know many things," she said, still smiling. "May I come in? I have something important to discuss with you, and the hallway isn't really the best place for such a conversation." Every reasonable part of Dave's brain was screaming at him to say no. Don't let strangers into your apartment, especially strange women who somehow know your name and show up at your door almost at 11 at night. This was exactly the kind of thing his mother had warned him about when he first moved to the city. But there was something about her that made all those reasonable thoughts seem less important. Maybe it was the way she looked at him, like she genuinely cared about what he might say. Maybe it was the fact that she didn't seem threatening at all, just mysterious. Or maybe it was that her presence made him feel more awake and alive than he had in months. I suppose that would be okay, Dave heard himself saying. He stepped aside and gestured for her to come in. She moved past him with a grace that reminded Dave of a dancer or maybe a cat. As she passed, he caught a scent that was completely unfamiliar but somehow comforting. It wasn't perfume exactly, more like the smell of rain on a summer evening mixed with something he couldn't identify. Dave closed the door behind her and immediately felt the click of the lock echoing louder than usual in his ears. There was something final about that sound, like he had just made a decision that would change things in ways he couldn't imagine yet. The woman walked slowly around his living room, looking at everything with intense curiosity. She picked up one of his coffee cups and examined it like she had never seen anything like it before. She ran her finger along the edge of his television screen, tilting her head as if trying to understand how it worked. When she saw his laptop still open with the screensaver running, she leaned down to look at it more closely. "You spend a lot of time with these devices," she said, but it wasn't a criticism. It sounded more like an observation, like she was trying to understand his life. "Yeah, I guess I do," Dave admitted. "I work with computers and phones all day, and then I come home and use more computers and phones. Not very exciting, I know." She turned to look at him with those incredible eyes. "Excitement is relative. What seems ordinary to you might be fascinating to someone else." Dave felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. When was the last time someone had made him feel like his ordinary life might actually be interesting? Lisa had always made him feel like he needed to be doing more, achieving more, becoming someone different. This woman seemed to think he was worth paying attention to exactly as he was. "So," Dave said, settling onto his couch and gesturing for her to sit as well. "What did you want to talk to me about? And I'm sorry, but I didn't catch your name." She sat down on the opposite end of the couch, but instead of facing forward, she turned her whole body toward him. Her movements were so fluid and natural that Dave found himself copying her position without thinking about it. "You can call me Luna," she said, "and what I want to talk to you about is quite complicated. It involves things that might be difficult for you to believe at first." "Try me," Dave said, surprising himself with his boldness. "I've had a pretty boring life lately. I could use some complications." Luna's smile grew wider, and Dave noticed that her teeth were perfectly white and straight. Everything about her seemed perfect actually, but not in a fake or artificial way. More like she was the best possible version of what a person could be. "I'm not from around here," she began, and something in her tone made Dave pay very close attention. "In fact, I'm not from anywhere that you would recognize. I've come a very long way to meet you specifically." Dave felt his eyebrows rise. "To meet me? Why would anyone come a long way to meet me? I fix broken phones for a living." "Because," Luna said, leaning slightly closer, "you're much more interesting than you think you are, and because I need your help with something that could change both of our lives forever." The documentary about space exploration was still playing on Dave's television, muted but visible. The images of distant planets and stars seemed to flicker more brightly as Luna spoke. Dave glanced at the screen, then back at her, and felt a strange connection between the two things. "What kind of help?" he asked, though part of him wasn't sure he really wanted to know the answer. Luna stood up gracefully and walked over to his window. She looked out at the street below, where a few cars were still moving through the night. When she turned back to him, her expression was serious but also kind. "The kind of help that requires trust," she said. "The kind that means stepping outside of everything you think you know about how the world works." Dave felt his heart beating faster. Every instinct he had was telling him that this conversation was about to go somewhere he had never been before. And for the first time in months, maybe years, that didn't scare him. It excited him. "I'm listening," he said. Luna moved away from the window and came back to sit closer to Dave on the couch. This time, she sat right next to him, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. It was a comfortable warmth, like sitting near a fireplace on a cold winter night. "What I'm about to tell you might sound impossible," she said, her voice gentle but serious, "but I need you to listen with an open mind." Dave nodded, though his heart was beating so fast he was sure she could hear it. Something about the way she spoke made him believe that whatever she was about to say would change everything. "I'm not from this world, Dave. I'm from a place that's very far away from here, farther than your telescopes can see. My people have been watching Earth for a long time. Studying how humans live, how they think, how they feel emotions. Dave blinked slowly. Any other night from any other person, these words would have made him think someone was playing a prank or maybe having some kind of mental breakdown. But coming from Luna, with her otherworldly beauty and those incredible eyes, the words felt like they might actually be true. "You're saying you're from another planet?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Yes," she said simply, "and I'm here as part of a mission to understand human connection, human relationships, and especially human love. These are things my people don't experience the same way you do. We needed to learn about them." Dave felt his world tilting. The documentary about space exploration suddenly seemed less like entertainment and more like a sign. "So you've been studying us like laboratory rats?" Luna's expression softened. "Not like that. More like trying to understand a beautiful song that we can hear but can't quite comprehend. Your species has something that fascinates us. You form deep bonds with each other. You sacrifice for people you care about. You create art and music and stories all because of feelings we don't fully understand." She reached out and touched Dave's hand. Her skin felt different from any human touch he had ever experienced. It was warm and soft, but there was also something electric about it, like a gentle current running between them. "But something unexpected happened," Luna continued. "I was supposed to observe and report back. I was supposed to maintain distance and stay objective. But the more time I spent learning about humans, the more I began to feel things I had never felt before." Dave looked into her eyes and saw something there that made his chest tight with emotion. It looked like loneliness, like confusion, like hope all mixed together. "What kind of things?" he whispered. Instead of answering with words, Luna stood up and began to walk around his small apartment again. But this time her movements were different. She touched his things with a tenderness that made Dave's breath catch. She ran her fingers along the spines of his books, picked up a photo of his family from the shelf, examined his collection of old video games with genuine curiosity. "I began to understand what it means to want to know someone completely," she said as she moved around the room. "To want to share experiences with them, to comfort them when they're sad, to celebrate with them when they're happy. These were completely foreign concepts to my people." Dave watched her explore his space, and somehow it didn't feel like an invasion of privacy. It felt like she was trying to understand him at the deepest level possible. When she picked up his guitar, the one he hadn't played in months, and strummed a few notes, the sound seemed to fill the room with more music than those strings had ever produced before. "Play something for me," she said, bringing the guitar over to him. "I'm not very good," Dave protested, but he took the guitar anyway. His fingers found the chords for a simple song, something gentle and melancholic that matched the strange mood of the evening. As he played, Luna sat back down beside him, even closer than before. She watched his fingers move across the strings with complete fascination, like she was witnessing magic. When he finished the song, she was quiet for a long moment. "That was beautiful," she said. "The way you can create something that moves emotions just by moving your fingers in certain patterns. It's incredible." Dave felt heat rise in his cheeks. "It's just a simple song. Nothing special." "Everything is special when you're experiencing it for the first time," Luna said. "And everything is special when you're experiencing it with someone you care about." The weight of those words settled between them. Dave set the guitar aside and turned to face her fully. "Luna, what exactly are you saying?" She took a deep breath like she was about to dive into deep water. "I'm saying that my mission was supposed to be scientific and detached. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being an observer and started being a participant. I started feeling human emotions, human desires, human connections." She paused and looked directly into his eyes. "And I started feeling them specifically for you." Dave felt like the air had been knocked out of his lungs. "For me, but we just met. How is that possible?" Luna smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I've been watching you for weeks, Dave. Learning your routines, understanding your personality, seeing how you treat other people, how you handle problems, how you find joy in small things. I wasn't supposed to make contact, but I couldn't stay away anymore. The idea that someone had been watching him should have been creepy or frightening. But coming from Luna, it felt more like being valued, like being chosen. How long had it been since anyone had paid that much attention to him? "So what happens now?" Dave asked. "Do you have to go back to your people? Do you have to report what you learned?" Luna's expression grew troubled. "That's the problem. I was supposed to return with information, but I can't go back to the way things were before. I can't pretend that what I've learned about human connection doesn't matter to me. I can't pretend that what I feel for you isn't real. She moved even closer to him on the couch, close enough that he could see tiny flecks of gold in her dark eyes. I need to understand these feelings completely before I make any decisions about my future. And I need to know if what I think I see in your eyes when you look at me is real. Dave's heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst. Everything about this situation was impossible, unbelievable, completely outside anything he had ever experienced. But at the same time, it felt more real than anything else in his life. What you see is real, he said softly. I don't understand what's happening here, but I've never felt more connected to another person in my life. Luna reached up and touched his face with her hand. Her touch was gentle but electric, sending waves of warmth through his entire body. Then help me understand what this connection means. Show me what it means to truly know another person. Dave looked into her eyes and saw trust, curiosity, and something deeper that he was afraid to name. Outside his apartment, the world continued its normal routine. Cars drove by. People slept in their beds, the city hummed with its usual energy. But inside his small living room, everything had changed. He leaned forward and kissed her softly, and it was like touching starlight. Luna responded with a gentleness and intensity that made Dave feel like he was discovering what it meant to be alive for the first time. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing differently. Is this what humans call love? Luna whispered. Dave looked at her, this incredible being who had somehow chosen him out of all the people in the world, and felt his heart expand in his chest. I think it might be, he whispered back, and as the night deepened around them, Dave realized that his ordinary life had just become the most extraordinary thing he could have ever imagined. The hours passed like minutes. Dave and Luna sat together on his couch talking about everything and nothing. She told him about her world, a place where logic ruled over emotion and where connections between people were based on duty rather than choice. He told her about his life, his dreams that had gotten buried under routine, his fear that he was wasting his time on Earth. As the first hints of dawn light began to creep through his apartment window, Dave noticed that Luna seemed to be growing more anxious. She kept looking toward the window, checking the time on his phone, and her usual calm composure was starting to crack. What's wrong? Dave asked, though part of him already suspected he didn't want to know the answer. Luna took a deep breath and moved to the window. The sky was turning from black to deep purple, and the first birds were starting to sing outside. She pressed her hand against the glass and her shoulders slumped slightly. They'll be coming for me soon, she said softly. My people. I was supposed to return before dawn, and when I don't, they'll come looking for me. Dave felt his heart sink. Somehow, in the magic of the past few hours, he had forgotten that this couldn't last forever. He had let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, this incredible woman could stay in his ordinary world. What happens when they find you? He asked. Luna turned back to him, and he could see sadness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. They'll take me back. They'll want to know what I learned, what information I gathered about human emotions and relationships, and then they'll probably never let me come back to Earth again. But you said you've changed. You said you feel things now that you didn't feel before. Won't they understand that? Luna shook her head slowly. My people don't understand change like that. To them, emotions are weaknesses that get in the way of clear thinking. They sent me here to study these things, not to experience them myself. If they knew how much I've changed, how much I've come to care about you and about this world, they would see it as a failure of my mission. Dave stood up and walked over to her. He took her hands in his, and even though he had been touching her all night, he was still amazed by how different her skin felt. Like it was made of something more precious than regular human flesh. Then don't tell them, he said. Tell them you learned what they wanted you to learn, give them their report, and then find a way to come back. Luna squeezed his hands, but her expression was pained. It's not that simple, Dave. They'll know. My people can sense emotional changes in each other. They'll be able to tell that I'm not the same person who left their ship weeks ago. Their ship? Dave felt another jolt of reality. There's actually a spaceship somewhere? Yes, Luna said. Hidden where your people can't detect it. And it's probably already preparing to leave Earth, with or without me. Dave felt panic rising in his chest. The idea of Luna disappearing from his life as suddenly as she had appeared was unbearable. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive, truly connected to another person. How could he go back to his ordinary routine after experiencing something like this? There has to be a way, he said. There has to be something we can do. Luna looked at him with those incredible eyes, and he could see that she was fighting some kind of internal battle. Finally, she seemed to come to a decision. There is one possibility, she said slowly, but it would mean giving up everything I've ever known. My people, my world, my entire previous life. What do you mean? Luna walked back to the couch and sat down heavily. Dave joined her, waiting for her to explain. I could choose to stay, she said. I could refuse to go back with them. But if I do that, I would be cut off from my people forever. I would become fully human, or as close to human as someone like me can become. I would have to live the rest of my life on Earth, never able to return home. Dave felt his heart racing. Is that even possible? Yes, but it's been done only once before in our entire history. And the person who made that choice was considered a traitor by our people. She was never spoken of again, never remembered, never acknowledged as having existed. The weight of what Luna was saying hit Dave like a physical blow. She was talking about giving up her entire identity, her entire world for him, for them. It was the most incredible thing anyone had ever considered doing for him, but it was also terrifying. Luna, I can't ask you to do something like that, to give up everything for someone you've only just met. Luna smiled, and for the first time since dawn had started breaking, it was a genuine, warm smile. You're not asking me to do anything. I'm telling you what I want to do, what I choose to do. She took his face in her hands, and Dave felt that electric connection again, stronger than ever. Dave, in the short time I've known you, I've experienced more real emotion, more genuine connection, more pure joy than I had in my entire previous existence. My people sent me here to study love, but they never expected me to fall in love myself. You're in love? Dave whispered, barely able to believe the words. Completely, Luna said. With you. With this world. With the possibility of a life where feelings matter more than duty. I don't want to go back to a world where connections are assigned and emotions are seen as flaws. Dave felt tears stinging his eyes. No one had ever loved him like this. No one had ever chosen him over everything else in their life. Lisa had left him because he wasn't exciting enough. His few other relationships had ended because he was too routine, too predictable, too ordinary. But Luna saw something in his ordinary life that was worth giving up the stars for. But what if you regret it? Dave asked. What if you miss your people, your real home? What if living as a human isn't what you expect it to be? Luna leaned forward and kissed him softly. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with determination. Then I'll deal with that when it happens. But I'd rather spend whatever time I have experiencing real love with you than spend eternity going through the motions of an emotionless existence. Outside the window, the sky was growing lighter. Dave could hear the sounds of the city waking up. Cars starting, people beginning their daily routines, the world moving forward with its normal rhythm. But inside his apartment, time seemed to be holding its breath. How much time do we have? Dave asked. Luna glanced toward the window again. Not much. They'll be here soon, and when they arrive, I'll have to make my choice. Go with them and never see you again, or stay with you and never see them again. Dave looked at this incredible woman who had walked into his life and turned everything upside down in the span of a single night. He thought about his boring job, his predictable routine, his small apartment with its squeaky door and broken elevator. None of that seemed to matter anymore. Whatever you choose, he said, I'll be here for you. I'll help you figure out how to be human. We'll figure it out together. Luna's smile was like sunrise itself. Promise me something, Dave. Anything. Promise me that no matter what happens in the next few minutes, you'll remember this night. Remember that someone traveled across the universe and chose to love you. Dave pulled her close and held her tight, breathing in that incredible scent that was like rain and starlight and possibilities. I promise, he whispered. But I also promise that this isn't ending. Whatever choice you make, this is just the beginning. And as the morning light grew stronger outside his window, Dave realized that his ordinary life had become the most extraordinary love story in the universe. The sound came from outside first. It was low and humming, like the deepest note of an organ, but somehow more musical and more alien than anything Dave had ever heard. Luna's head snapped toward the window, and Dave saw both fear and resolve flash across her face. They're here, she said simply. Dave looked out the window but couldn't see anything unusual. The street looked the same as always, early morning commuters starting to appear, a few joggers making their way down the sidewalk. But that sound was definitely real, and it was definitely not coming from any earthly source. "What do we do?" Dave asked, though he wasn't sure if there was actually anything they could do. Luna stood up and smoothed down her dress. Something about her posture changed, becoming more formal, more regal. It was like she was preparing for an important meeting. "You don't do anything," she said. "This is my choice to make, and mine alone. But Dave, I need you to know something before they arrive." She walked over to him and took his hands in hers one last time. Her skin still felt electric, but now there was something else there too. Something that felt like goodbye. "What?" Dave asked, though his throat felt tight. "I need you to know that even if I had searched every planet in the universe, I never would have found anyone who made me feel the way you do. You're not ordinary, Dave, you're extraordinary, and anyone who ever made you feel otherwise was wrong." Before Dave could respond, there was a bright flash of light outside his window. Not like lightning or fireworks, but like someone had turned on a giant spotlight that somehow didn't hurt to look at. The humming sound grew louder, and Dave could feel it vibrating in his chest. Luna walked to the window and looked out. Dave joined her and saw something that made his mind struggle to process what he was seeing. There, hovering silently above the street, was what could only be described as a ship. But it wasn't like any spaceship from movies or TV shows. It was smooth and organic looking, almost like it had been grown rather than built. Its surface seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and it gave off that soft, bright light that somehow didn't seem to illuminate anything around it. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Luna said quietly. "I used to think it was the most beautiful thing in the universe." "Used to?" Dave asked. Luna turned to look at him, and her smile was so bright it could have powered the city. "Now I know better." The humming stopped suddenly, and the silence felt heavy and expectant. Then, without any sound at all, 3 figures appeared in Dave's living room. They didn't walk through the door or climb through the window. They were simply not there one moment and there the next. Dave's first instinct was to be afraid, but the figures weren't threatening. They looked similar to Luna, tall and graceful with that same otherworldly beauty. But there was something colder about them, more distant. When they looked at Dave, it was like being examined by scientists studying an interesting but ultimately unimportant specimen. One of them, a man with silver hair and eyes like mirrors, spoke to Luna in a language that sounded like music played at the wrong speed. Luna responded in the same language, and even though Dave couldn't understand the words, he could hear the tension in their conversation. The exchange went on for several minutes. Dave stood there feeling completely out of place in his own apartment, watching Luna argue with her people in a language that made his ears tingle. He could tell from their body language that they weren't happy with whatever she was telling them. Finally, Luna switched back to English, and her voice was strong and clear. "I've made my decision," she said. "I'm staying here." The 3 figures looked at each other, and Dave could sense their surprise even though their expressions barely changed. The silver-haired man spoke again in their musical language, and this time his tone was sharp and disapproving. Luna's response was even sharper. Dave didn't need to understand the words to know that she was standing her ground. One of the other figures, a woman with hair that seemed to be made of actual starlight, stepped forward and spoke directly to Dave. When she opened her mouth, the words that came out were in perfect English, but they felt cold and mechanical. "Human," she said, "you have interfered with our research. This subject was not supposed to form emotional attachments." Dave felt a surge of anger. "Subject? She's not a subject. She's a person with her own thoughts and feelings and choices." The starlight-haired woman tilted her head like she was trying to understand a foreign concept. "Feelings are temporary chemical reactions. Choices should be based on logic and benefit to the collective. This individual is malfunctioning." "I am not malfunctioning," Luna said, stepping between Dave and the 3 figures. "I am evolving. I am growing. I am becoming something better than what I was." The silver-haired man spoke again, and this time Dave could hear something like sadness in the musical words. Luna's response was quieter, more gentle, but still firm. "What are they saying?" Dave asked. Luna turned to him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "They're asking me to reconsider. They're telling me that if I stay here, I can never return home. I'll be cut off from our people forever. They're asking me if one human is worth giving up everything I've ever known." Dave felt his heart clench. The weight of what Luna was choosing hit him all over again. She was giving up her family, her culture, her entire world for him. It was the most incredible gift anyone had ever offered him, but it was also a terrible responsibility. "And what did you tell them?" he asked. Luna smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing Dave had ever seen. It was a smile that contained entire universes of love and possibility and hope. "I told them that you're not just one human. You're the human who taught me what it means to love. You're the human who showed me that feelings aren't weaknesses, they're strengths. You're the human who made me understand that a life without love isn't really living at all." She turned back to her people and spoke in their language one final time. Her words were calm and confident, and Dave could hear the finality in them. The three figures looked at each other again, and Dave could sense their confusion and disappointment. They had come here expecting to collect their researcher and return home with valuable data. Instead, they were losing one of their own to something they couldn't understand or control. The silver-haired man spoke one last time, and his words sounded like a formal pronouncement. Luna nodded once, then stepped back and took Dave's hand. The three figures began to fade, becoming translucent like ghosts. But before they disappeared completely, the starlight-haired woman looked directly at Dave one more time. "Take care of her," she said. And for the first time, there was something almost human in her voice. "She has given up everything for you." And then they were gone. The bright light outside the window faded, the humming sound disappeared, and Dave's apartment felt ordinary again. Except for the extraordinary woman standing beside him, holding his hand and smiling like she owned his heart. Which, Dave realized she absolutely did so, Luna said, turning to face him fully. "It looks like you're stuck with me. Are you ready to teach an alien how to be human?" Dave looked at her. This incredible being who had chosen love over duty, emotion over logic, him over everything else in the universe. He thought about his boring job and his routine life and his tiny apartment, and realized that none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was that he had been chosen by someone who had traveled across the stars to find him. "I'm ready," he said, pulling her close. "But I have a feeling you're going to teach me just as much about being human as I teach you." Luna laughed, and the sound filled Dave's apartment with more joy than it had ever contained before. "I love you, Dave from Earth. I love you too, Luna from the stars." And as the morning sun streamed through his window, illuminating the beginning of their new life together, Dave realized that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories start with the most ordinary moments. All it takes is someone brave enough to knock on the door and someone brave enough to answer it. Their adventure was just beginning.